What's your take on Canelo? And you've covered him a lot. Is he getting close to the end? How do you see that? How do you see him at this point in his career?
Well, I think we're about to learn something with regard to that. Um, he could either be at the doorstep of becoming diminished from his previous level of true greatness. He is, in fact, a great fighter, and he's proven that in a variety of ways and in a variety of matchups. But the Bivol fight was a matchmaking error.
Mm-hmm.
The Ryder fight was not a rampaging victory of the kind that you might have expected against an opponent of Ryder's identity. And there comes an almost inevitable moment in the career of a fighter like Canelo, at which he has, largely unconsciously, by the way, made enough money, bought enough beautiful horses, had enough exalted upper-class Mexican privilege to have become somewhat satiated. And the fighter never knows that. Right. They keep going forward thinking that they're the same as ever, and they're putting out the same in the gym as ever, and they are just as dedicated to the craft and just as relentless in their approach as ever before. But that's not human nature. Human nature is that at some point you have reached a level of satisfaction at which it becomes much more difficult to go into the gym and be the same person you've been for 10, 12, 15 years in the gym. And one thing I always say to non-boxing fans who are learning about the sport is that this is competition of extremely fine margins. These are not massive margins of competition, regardless of how thunderous a knockout may look. The knockout takes place because some vulnerability emerges, and the predator, the attacker, knows how to take advantage of it. But it doesn't mean that there's a tremendous difference in the two fighters. And so in the case of Canelo, given all his years in the sport, the number of fights he's had, the number of things he has accomplished, as with any fighter of his ilk, if he goes to the gym for 6-8 weeks in advance of the next fight and he's 2% less every day than he has been in the gym before, and he might arrive in the ring on fight night 8 or 10% less than what he's been. And if that turns out to be the case, then all bets are off. He's a very logical favorite to beat Jermell Charlo. I think that most of the style elements of the fight probably favor Canelo, but it's largely about how much of 100% of Canelo is still left.
It was an interesting, you mentioned the matchmaking with Bivol, and this is an interesting match too, though, because he's got to be coming up in weight, What's your take on the Charlo perspective?
I think conventional wisdom is that he needs to stay away from Canelo's punch, that he needs to find a way to limit, if not eliminate, Canelo's opportunities to land a big left hook or something powerful inside that can hurt him and potentially put him away. He needs to do his best to make sure it's a boxing match and not a slugfest. And he's not going in matching Canelo gun for gun, but rather seeking tactical advantages and ways to score. That becomes a crapshoot, because if he's fighting to score rather than fighting to hurt, then he has to depend on the judges to honor him. And typically, over the course of Canelo's career, with a lot of good reasons and justification, he's been the one who's gotten the better end of the stick in terms of judging. Right. So it's a very tough equation for Jermell Charlo, as it would be for most Canelo opponents. This is an interesting story. Now the shoe is on the other foot. Canelo lost a fight. What does that do to his confidence? What does that do to his commitment in the gym? What does that do to that equation I mentioned earlier, where he's already had so many things, he's already achieved so much? How much is enough?
Right, right. Do you think there's a danger? I suppose it's a danger anytime you get in the ring, but with a world-class fighter like Charlo is, do you think he's thinking, okay, this guy's smaller than me? Do you think Canelo could that creep into his mind in any way, shape, or form?
Yes. How could he resist? How could he avoid thinking that about demonstrably a smaller man?
Right.
And particularly so much smaller than Bivol,
Right.
that that he has the right and the privilege to say, "Oh, this is nothing like what happened to me there. This is something different." But this guy's better than Ryder. He has more skills.
Yep.
He has some speed and quickness that could present problems for Canelo. If Canelo is in any way diminished, if we're going to see the Canelo who fought the first two fights with Triple G, not the third one, and who beat Kovalev, if that Canelo is coming in, then I don't think you can see a lot of chance for Jermell Charlo.
Right.
But again, if we see 85% of that Canelo, even 90% of that Canelo, that might open the door enough for Charlo with a great performance to spring the big upset. But I kind of think he has to hurt Canelo to do that. If he doesn't hurt Canelo, again, he's going uphill against the judging equation.
Right, right. And, as we've seen, Canelo's not an easy guy to hurt. You reference those fights with Triple G. If anyone, look at all the punches.
100%. If you can take Triple G's punch, you can take anybody's punch.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me a little about and what you're doing there on Fight Night.
Okay. It's ppv.com. And while Showtime pay-per-view continues to have a broadcast where there are broadcasters using their voices to apply captions to pictures, what Lance Pugmire and I do on ppv.com is to type our observations, trade observations with each other, answer questions for each other. And oh, by the way, viewers can present questions to us. Viewers can engage in the conversation as well, and we do feedback with them. So it's an ancillary to the broadcast. It's a new form of media expression, a new way to enhance perspective and information on the fight, and it'll be fun for me to be doing something entirely different than blow by blow. I've put a lot of captions on these pictures before, in the role of being a ringside blow-by-blow guy. And during the last few years of HBO boxing, I kind of had it in the back of my mind, the logical transition that will take place here at some point is that Max Kellerman will walk around behind Roy Jones and take over my chair and become the blow-by-blow person. And I'll trade places with him and do what Larry Merchant did for years. Do what Al Bernstein does on Showtime and offer a kind of overarching perspective. Right. Well, that didn't happen. And now I get a chance to do it in type digitally for ppv.com. So you don't have to put up with my aging face or my fractious voice. None of that is a problem. It's just words on paper or words on the screen.
I would imagine having real-time interaction though with fans as they're watching, that should be exciting. That should be interesting. Getting that real-time kind of feedback from them and you back to them.
I've always loved walking out of the arena after the fight and having 8, 10, 12, 15 people come up and say, "Hey, what did you think?" Or "I think this, what do you say?" etc. I've always loved that part, because that's a lot of what boxing is. My opinion, your opinion. What did we see tonight? What do we see going forward? So I've always liked to engage in that way. And now I get a chance to do it with the greatest of all lucky benefits, a paycheck.
Indeed, indeed.